All right, welcome to class, everyone. We're going to start off with the Hebrew alphabet, both reading and writing. First, I'm going to introduce you to the characters. Then we're going to split them up between the block characters, the ktav ashuri, those characters that you need to know, and then the cursive characters if you desire to learn how to write in Hebrew and read Hebrew writing. Some of you will have no need for this. If you're just students of scripture, block characters are sufficient. If you want to take your Hebrew to the next level, you want to read, and if you want to do anything in modern Hebrew, it's important to know cursive characters. Then we're going to talk about 6 special letters, the BeGeDKePeT letters. These are letters that have 2 sounds. And then we'll go through some writing, and I'm writing on a whiteboard, so it may not be as clean as calligraphy, but you'll get the gist, and that will be sufficient for what we're doing. So firstly, just talking about the alphabet. The alphabet consists of 22 letters. It's called ktav ashuri, the writing of the Assyrians. And that's because if you look at the most ancient Hebrew, it looks a little different. It looks like what people popularly call Phoenician. Phoenician, of course, the Phoenicians popularized this ancient Semitic alphabet. But when we see today, in terms of these block letters that are popularized basically in Jewish writings, these are taken from the style that Aramaic was written in during the Assyrian period, and some of it, thinks back to the Assyrian period, and they've become decorated somewhat. They've developed their own calligraphic nuances, but if you were to learn the block characters, you'd be able to look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and basically read them. So that's how old they are. All right, well, let's move on and just look at them. Our first is Aleph. It's a glottal stop. We like to think of it as A because it's alphabetic, and it follows the format ABGD, as most traditional systems did. We use ABCD in English, but it's not actually an A. It's just a breath like this. And a number of vowel marks or nekudot will be placed on it to give it its sound. Next, we have Beth, which has 2 pronunciations, B and V. Gimel, which has 2 pronunciations, G and GH, G and R. Today, however, it's mostly just G. You're probably not going to hear any Hebrew speaker articulating the second sound. The same with Dalet. Dalet has 2 sounds, D and the. Basically, you're only going to hear people pronounce the D sound. You won't hear people aspirating the D, the. He, which is just our regular H, our English H. Vav, or historically Wow, which is a W for the most part. It can sometimes act like an O or a U, but among speakers of modern Hebrew, it's going to be Vav, the, and that has to do with the way the Hebrew is spoken in the Holy Land. It's pronounced, the W's are pronounced as V's. So in some books, you may even see it as spelled VAV, even though most traditional grammars will spell it WAW. Zain, Z, Chet. Think of it like a hard H, Payat. So historically, this is a harder or dull T. If you listen carefully, I'm saying Payat. I'm not saying Tet. This is not something you're going to hear. If you just pronounce it as a T, I think it's sufficient. I like pronouncing all the letters myself, but most folks won't do that. And you may come across as pompous or something. I don't know. Up to you. Yod, which is Y or I. Kap, which is K or KH. K or K. And both of those are definitely pronounced. Lamed, your regular L. Mim, which is just a M sound. And there's 2 different ways to write it. There's just like Kap, we saw a moment ago. In fact, I can go back to that. Kap has an initial and a medial, and then a final letter. The final letter hangs down below the line, the rule, the line rule. Same with mim. Mim rides along the line, you'll notice. And the initial or medial is on the right side. The final is on the left side. Keep in mind, Hebrew, like most Semitic languages, is written right to left. Same with Nun. Nun has an initial medial and a final form. The final form hangs below the line. Both of these are just our regular N. Samech, that's just an S, a normal S. Ayin, which historically is this I sound, but you're not going to have everybody using this in modern Hebrew. So actually, some people do say it, and you can hear them when they speak it. But I think most people don't. If you listen to people speaking modern Hebrew, all of a sudden you realize, okay, they're not using ayin. Pei has a initial medial and a final form. Again, on the right is your initial medial. On the left is your final form. And it has two pronunciations. It has a p and a p or a f sound. Basically, it's an F. The spirantized pH often, moves into F. That's why philosophy, right, sounds like an F sound, even though we write pH. Now we have Tzade, which has an initial medial on the right and a final form that hangs below the line rule on the left. And it's basically a TS sound. Tss, tss. Historically and comparative Semitically, probably a sul. That's a little bit different, sul versus tss. But speakers of modern Hebrew will pronounce it as TS. Qaf is your Q sound. And if you notice, it sounds a little different than Kap. Kap is just K. Qaf is a guttural K, but like a sound. If you don't say it that way, it's totally fine. Most people speaking modern Hebrew aren't using the the glottal Q sound. They just say it like a K sound. Resh. In modern Hebrew, it sounds like a Re. So they'll say something like Rosh Hashanah, Rosh, right? That's an R. That's a Resh sound, or that's the Resh letter. You'll notice the difference between Resh and Dalet. The Resh is one stroke, and it's kind of curved toward the edge, and Dalet has a little, has a 90-degree mark with a little overhang at the top. Now we have Sin, which is just your S sound. May have sounded different historically, but it's basically an S. The same writing, but a different dotted superscription in the right makes it Shin or Sh. So S, Sh. Okay. Make sure those don't confuse you. And finally, the last letter is Tau or Tav, and that is a T or TH sound. It has two sounds. Now let's go ahead and look at the way that the cursive Hebrew is written. This cursive is actually a medieval script used for writing today. So here's your Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, or Wow, Zain, Chet, Tet, Yod, Kaf, initial medial on the right, final on the left, Lamed, Mim, initial medial on the right, final on the left, Nun, initial medial on the right, final on the left, Samek, Ayin, Pei, initial medial on the right, final on the left, Sade, initial medial on the right, final on the left, Qaf, Rish, Shin or Sin, Tau. Now the BeGeDKePeT letters, what we do is we'll put a dot in these letters to distinguish the hard sound versus the soft sound. So if you see Bet with the dot, you pronounce it as a B. If you see it without a dot, you pronounce it as a V. Gimel with a dot, it's a G. Without a dot, historically was a r, but pretty much it's just going to be a G today. Dalet with a dot in the middle is going to be a D sound. Without it is going to be a the sound. Kap with a dot. This dot's called a dagesh. Okay, so we're going to put a dagesh, a dot in the middle, and it's going to be k, hard. And without it, it's going to be k. You'll notice the final one isn't going to be hard. That's because if it's following a vowel, it softens. Pe with a dagesh will be p. Without one will be f. Tav with a dot is t, and without it is th. The first four letters beginning with Aleph. Aleph is going to be 3 strokes. 1, 2, 3. Cursive. Bet, 2 strokes. You can go past the line here. Make sure you go past, okay? Cursive has a little bounce at the bottom. Gimel, very simple, like that. In the cursive. And Dalet, pay attention to this section here. So with Bet and Dalet, you have these lines extended. The next 3 letters beginning with Hey, like an unfinished rectangle. This straight. Pretty much the same in the cursive. Woe or Vav. And Zain. Chet. Tet. Yod. Notice how high Yod is. Okay, so if our line rule is there, Yod is up here, smallest letter. Now Kop. The initial medial, but the final form, like so. Lamed. Let's see if I can fit Mim in here. Initial medial. Final. Let's go ahead and do Mem again, just to make sure we get it right. Mem, initial medial, then final Mem. It's going to be like this. Nun, initial medial, like so. Final, below the line. Pretty much the same. Okay, Samech. Kind of like the backwards sigma, think of it that way. Ayin, or Ayin. Now, Pei and Sade each have initial forms and final forms. That's your Pei. And it's your final Pei, so the beginning or in the middle, and then at the end. Pei. Now your Sade, the initial or medial, pretty much the same. in the final. So, Sade, initial, final. Initial, medial, final. Qaf, that's pretty much the same. Resh. Now look, against Dalat, Resh is kind of one motion. Dalat, make it 2. Resh, make it 1. Sin. Shin. Tav or Tau.